Hey, friends, thank you so much for joining our online gathering. I'm so glad that you are with us. As we do every week, I want to remind us and give us a note of encouragement and comfort from the scriptures, specifically from the prophet Isaiah. This is Isaiah chapter 40. This is what he says. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not faint or grow weary. His knowledge is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint, and to him who has no might, he increases strength. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall fall exhausted. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. My friends, the reality of the world that we live in today is that it's tiring. It's wearisome. Do you feel tired today? Do you feel weary? Do you feel tired of this quarantine, this coronavirus, the constant news stories? My friends, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling weary, let me assure you, you have come to the right place. We all are in the same boat. We're all weary if we're honest with ourselves. And we're all dealing with the loss of this pandemic, both the loss of life in general, but also the micro losses that we're feeling. I talked with multiple people this week after schools have closed that are feeling the weight of not being able to see their students again, and people in administration, principals, vice principals, and teachers. There's just a lot of grief and weariness and tiredness that our world delivers to us generally, and now specifically in this time of pandemic. See, that's the reality of the world that we live in. But here's the truth. The truth is that Jesus is this Lord that this passage is talking about, that Jesus is the everlasting God. And you look at who this Jesus is. He is the creator of the ends of the earth. He is unsearchable in his knowledge. This is teaching us about who God is. But not only that, the text also tells us about God's character. Listen to what it says. He gives power to the faint. So it's saying that Jesus, this God, this Lord, he is power. But not only that, it teaches us something about his character that he then gives that power away. He gives power to the faint, and he increases the strength of those that feel like they have nowhere else to go. This is the type of God that wants to meet with us today. The type of God that wants to take our weariness and give us his strength, that wants to take our tiredness and gives us his endurance. So if you're feeling weak, if you're feeling tired, if you feel like you need endurance today, you've come to the right place. And that's the type of God. Jesus is the type of God that wants to deliver to you his strength, his endurance. And really what we're talking about today is how Jesus meets us. He meets us in the midst of anxiety. That's what we're going to be talking about today. That Jesus meets us in the midst of anxiety, and he offers us a better choice of love and joy. That's what we're talking about today. If you're joining us on social media, thank you guys so much. Here's what I want you to do. If you're joining us on social media right now, whatever time it is, whatever's going on, I want you to hit like on this video. I want you to do a comment. Tell us who you are and who's joining you and where you're from. So Gary and Sarah, if you're jumping in with us, you can say, hey, this is Gary and Sarah and Cage and Camden and Flynn, and we're joining from Clarksville. Just let us know where you're joining from so that we can know who's jumping in with us. That would be wonderful. And it also helps us. It helps us so that more people can see what we're doing. And finally, if you're on social media, if you will just please hit the share button. It's such a simple thing to hit share, write a quick comment, say, hey, join us as we're watching this. You never know who your friends might be that would never step foot inside of a church, that would never step foot inside of the YMCA where we typically meet, but that will watch a video on their cell phone because you shared it. And it's just something so small, but it could be so impactful for somebody's life if they were to view this and they're spiritually curious. If you're joining us on our website, you can text us at this number that's going to show up on the screen, 931-326-4512. That number again is 931-326-4512. Again, just text us your name, text us your information, let us know how we can love you, serve you, and we just want to know that you're jumping in with us. This is our video setup. So, Robert, I think you can get a pan to a wide shot. So, I got everybody over there. Mom, you got to wave too. Robert's here. He's running the live stream. Mom is donating some of her cameras. She's got a couple iPhones and an iPad that we're commandeering as her son. I just said, "Hey, Mom, would you be willing to help me for a couple hours?" And she was kind enough to come over. So we're doing this. We really, really want your feedback. So again, you can text us at 931 326 4512 to give us any sort of feedback as we're going through this. And we are going to go live with a Q&A at 11 a.m. So anytime during our message today, text us 931 326 4512 or comment. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, if you're watching this, you can just text us or comment. We'll see those comments. And then when we go live at 11 a.m., we'll have already some questions and some feedback kind of queued up, ready to go. So again, whatever time you're watching this, text us your feedback, comments, questions. If you agree with us, let us know. But if you disagree with us, please let us know, because we'd love to have a back and forth dialogue as much as we can with this social distancing. So here's some ways that you can join us. Okay, remember, Q&A, 11 a.m., live on social media. So we're going to be on our website, on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope, and Twitch. You can join us on all of those. Just go there. If you're on our website, you just hit refresh. And we actually already have a live video scheduled for Sunday at 11 a.m. on Facebook. So please join us for our live Q&A. And then also, just one more thing too, here's some ways that you can give. We want to continue to maintain our generosity during this time. And actually, let me just pause for a second and say, thank you guys so much. Last month, we had the highest internal giving in our church's history. So thank you so much for your generosity. During this time, during this pandemic, you guys have been giving faithfully. There's a couple people who expressed to me that they just started giving for the first time in years. And so I just want to say thank you. We're actually able to meet our budget internally last month because of what you guys did. So please continue to give. You can go online to set up a recurring gift or a one-time gift on our website, redeeminghope.org/give, or you can send us some money over Venmo if you'd like to, and all of those are tax deductible. So as we come in this morning, I want to remind us of why we are here. Not just why we're here, but why we're here. See, our vision is this. See, we exist as a church. We exist as a family of faith that follows Jesus and helps others find him by living all of life as missionaries of hope. That means that we want to live life together like a family. Okay? And I think we can do that even during the pandemic, even during a quarantine. We can get on Zoom calls. We can talk with one another. We can text. We can get on these types of things where we can have time together even if we're apart. That's what social media and our internet is doing for us. We want to follow Jesus together. I really want us to continue reading the scriptures together. We have a church-wide reading plan. We have groups that meet throughout the week so that we can keep following Jesus together. But we also want to be a place for others to find Jesus. That's why I want you to share this on your social media. I want you to blow up people's social media with this, because I want other people who might be exploring faith, who might actually be more sensitive to faith as a result of this coronavirus that's plaguing the world right now, maybe they might be open to hearing. And so we want to be a place that's open and honest so that people can explore faith and find Jesus with us. And finally, we want to live all of our lives like missionaries. And I believe that we can do that even during the pandemic, reaching out to your neighbors, reaching out to your friends, calling people that you haven't seen in a while. Guess what? Millennials are picking up the phone now. It's freaking amazing. I love it. I'm calling people left and right, talking with them. And so just pick up the phone, call people. And I want to remind us of this. You individually tuning in, if you see Redeeming Hope as your church family, you are important to the vision of our church, and you impact the vision of our church. That means when you are faithful, when you are consistent, when you give of your time and your things, when you read the scriptures consistently, as your marriages are getting healthier, as your relationship with Jesus is getting healthier, guess what? We as a church get healthier too. Like, we collectively get healthier when the individual parts of our church are growing and thriving. So I believe that what we do over the next 5 weeks will determine the next 5 months of our church. So I want to challenge you. I want you to redeem this quarantine. We're going to talk about what that looks like at our live Q&A. But I want you to redeem this time. Be in the scriptures. rest, take time with your family, connect, men especially, heads of household, disciple your families. That's what I want for you. Lead strong, lead well, so that when we come out of this, we are stronger followers of Jesus, we're healthier followers of Jesus, we're more mature followers of Jesus. And I believe if we come out of this quarantine more mature and godly and holy and healthy, then I believe that it's going to set up our church to have even greater impact in Clarksville and to have an even more greater depth in our relationship with Jesus. So we've been in the book of Luke for the past couple of months, and really what we've been exploring is our identity through the book of Luke. And how we define identity is what we think about God and what we think about ourselves. And when those two things collide, that's our identity. So I want us to have a proper view of God by looking up. I want us to have a proper view of ourselves by looking in. But then I honestly believe that that impacts how we view out and go out into the world. So we look up to see who God is, in to see who we are, and then we look outward to see how we then live. And so this morning, I think we're in an absolutely great text to explore the identity of who Jesus is and the identity of who we are. And I really believe that when we grasp our identity, we will grow into maturity. When we grasp our identity, we will grow into maturity. As I mentioned before, we want to be a place that's open to people of all different parts in their faith journey. And so to help us shape a culture of that, we have 4 disclaimers that guide every single thing that we do as a church. So if you're joining us, and you do not identify as a follower of Jesus, you are welcome here. If you don't believe the Bible is true, you're welcome here. If you're hurting, like I said before, if you're tired or weary, you're welcome here. And if you have questions, you're welcome here. And especially bring those questions to our live Q&A at 11 a.m. Our text this morning is from Luke 10, starting in verses 38, going to 42. This is what it has to say. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. And a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her to get up and help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. But one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her." This is God's word. So, in the book of Luke, we've been discovering who Jesus is. And the chapter 10, which is where we're coming to today, is got this theme of sight, right? Seeing Jesus. Jesus even says in verse 23 of the same chapter, he says, "Blessed are the eyes who see." So this is all about exposing who Jesus is to the world. And today is going to show us a lot about who Jesus is by Jesus meeting us in the midst of our anxiety. So our main point for today is this, that Jesus meets us in the midst of anxiety and offers us the better choice of joy-filled love. That's what we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to set the stage for a few minutes, but there's 3 main points that I want us to take away from these short few verses. The first one is this, that anxiety is a choice that revolves around fear and pride. Anxiety is a choice that revolves around fear and pride. Secondly, is that Jesus destroys anxiety with joy-filled love. And third, Jesus took the bitter portion so that we can take the better portion. So I want to quickly set the stage for what's going on in verses 38 to 40 so that we can get to verse 41 and these 3 points. So this is setting the stage. So I want us to go back to Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 39. This is just a recap. As they went on their way, Jesus entered a village. So Jesus had just been fighting with a lawyer about holiness and what holiness looks like and what does it look like to serve your neighbor. And so he's been in the midst of crowds. He's been in tension. He's had lawyers. He's had Pharisees. He's had Sadducees. He's had all these religious people trying to trip him up. And he just needs a freaking break, man. So he goes into a village and Martha invites him in. So she invites him to come to her house. And now this Martha, she had a sister named Mary. And actually, what we don't see in this story, but what we know from other texts, is that Mary and Martha had a third person living with them, a man named Lazarus, who was their brother. And so it's a brother and his two sisters are living in this house. And what we find, actually, kind of spoiler alert, the end of this story goes well for them because Jesus becomes close friends with Mary and Martha and with Lazarus, and he consistently goes out. They live a little bit outside of the city, and so he's away from the hustle and bustle. He's away from all these lawyers and rabbis trying to trick him and catch him in lies or catch him in whatever. And he goes out to get respite at Mary and Martha and Lazarus' house. And actually, this is the same Lazarus that Jesus raised from the dead in John chapter, I believe it's chapter 11. And so they're friends. So we see a contrast, though, because Mary invites, and it says that Martha invites, but Mary sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. So Martha extends an invitation, but Mary gives Jesus her attention. Martha extends the invitation, but Mary gives Jesus her attention. And it sets us up with a contrast in the next verse. Look at the next verse. But Martha, so we see Mary sitting at the foot of Jesus, listening to his teaching, but Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up and said to him, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me. So it's very interesting. So this word distracted is an interesting word. It literally means to be drawn away. Martha was drawn in, and she was too busy. And a word to describe it, like encumbered or weighed down with many things. That's what that word means, to be weighed down with many things. So I have a question for you. Are you weighed down with many things? You might be like Martha. I think many of us are. And you can feel the weight by the things that she say. Don't you care? I'm serving alone. You can tell that she's absolutely exasperated, and you can feel the weight of it. What she's really saying is, don't you care that I'm doing all of this work? I need help. Why don't you care about this? And I want us to ask an obvious question with maybe a less than obvious answer, is why was Martha upset? Now, see, on one level, we can completely understand the justification for why she's upset. I mean, think about it for a second. Like, she invites Jesus over for a dinner party. Okay, so she's got her sister and her brother that live with her. But Jesus doesn't just come alone, right? If it's just Jesus, it's just a little bit extra food on the plate. But think about this. He's bringing 12 posse with him, right? So he's got a whole entourage of people that she has to feed. Now, I want you to think about your family and inviting someone in to your house, and it's 12 people plus another, so 13. So it's Jesus and his 12. I want you to think about that. That's a lot for us. We're in first century. Like, we can get on our phone and order from Publix. Maybe not 24-hour shipping, but we can get groceries delivered, right? It might take a while with this virus thing, but we're getting groceries delivered to the front door. That's not the way that they are. I mean, they've got a whole different way of prepping for food, and to have that many people in our houses would be 13 more people would be a lot. But can you imagine what it was for Martha? So she's got this important guest. She's got 12 posse. She's got food on the stove. Now, you know, if you cook, I cook quite a bit in our family, is that you clean while you cook. Like, you can't just chop something up and just leave it there, because then you're going to run out of counter space, right? I'd imagine maybe they didn't have like a 5,000 square foot house in first century Jerusalem, all right? So like granite countertops maybe weren't the thing back then. So she's got all these different things that are going on. She's cleaning, she's cooking, she's got stuff on the stove, and you can tell, you can imagine that she's just so weighted. And now there's her sister Mary. She's just sitting there, like, not helping. Martha doesn't get to sit. Martha's got to work. Martha's got stuff to do. She needs a hand. She needs extra hands. She needs some help. And so we can all relate, right? And you know, I think we maybe can all relate to this even in the midst of this quarantine, right? Even this week, I was a little frustrated with Rachel. Like, the dishes are piling up. We've got laundry. Rachel's, in school right now, so she's studying. I'm working to prep the sermon. We've got all these different things going, and the dishes are piling, laundry's piling. Guess what? I can't go to a coffee shop now. Like, I can't get it out of my head. I'm quarantined. I'm in this house. I'm locked down. Okay, so I got to see this crap everywhere I go. And when it rains, the dogs go out and they get mud all over my floors. It's just a pain, right? So you can sense the frustration I just need some help. And the question of why was Martha upset, I think goes to a deeper question of who was Martha serving. I think that helps us figure out why she was upset. You see, I look at this and I think Jesus is having a pretty good time, right? There's no lawyers, there's no Sadducees, there's no Pharisees, there's no people who are antagonistic towards him. Like he's able to rest in a home. He's been traveling. Remember, Jesus didn't have like a home he could go back to. He didn't have a bachelor pad. Like he was homeless, right? So he's in a home with people, with his friends. He's relaxing, he's teaching. There's no signs of intensity or conflict. And what we can infer from other passages is that he has a deep level of friendship and connection with Mary and with Martha and with Lazarus, their brother. And so there's no conflict. But you see, here's the deal. If what Martha was doing, if she was really serving Jesus, then she wouldn't have been upset when he refused to let things go the way that she wanted them to go. Let me say it again. If Martha was really serving Jesus, she wouldn't have been upset when he refused to let things go the way that she wanted them to go. And what this shows us is that her frustration and anger directed at Jesus and directed at her sister proves that she's not doing this for Jesus. She's serving for herself. She's doing it for her. You see, Martha was as upset because she wasn't being served by having what she needed to accomplish the tasks that she wanted to do. She wasn't getting something out of this exchange. She wasn't getting the benefit of having everything put together and everything running great and being able to direct people. Martha was really a type A personality. It's Martha's house. Now remember, she shares a house with Mary and Lazarus, but the text says it's Martha's house. Like she's got a type A personality. She's a driver. And she probably wants people that she can direct to make this dinner perfect, right? But instead, she's alone in the kitchen, getting more frustrated, getting more angry. And like I said, I think we can all probably identify with this. She wasn't getting something out of this. She really wasn't serving Jesus. She was serving herself. And side note, let me just, like as an aside, nothing related to the sermon, Satan really loves devoted Christians that get angry with God and angry with each other while doing ministry. He loves it. He would love you doing ministry and be so angry with God and bitter with God that he's not giving you what you need, and angry and bitter at other Christians who maybe aren't as faithful as you. He absolutely loves it when you do ministry. He would prefer that you're doing ministry with a heart that's disconnected and discontent from God. He loves it. And oftentimes Satan uses ministry as a means to distract us from our relationship with Jesus. So let me just put that as an aside. You can put that in your pipe and smoke it. We're going to keep going, okay? So this sets us the stage for what's going on with Martha, okay? So she's distracted, she's drawn away, she's weighed down, she's encumbered with all these things. She's serving herself, cloaked with kind of this disguise of serving Jesus, but really she's just not getting what she wants out of this whole arrangement. And that's where we come to our first point today, is that anxiety is a choice revolving around fear and pride. Look with me at verse 41. But the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are anxious and troubled about many things. Martha, Martha. It's actually a really good clue into how Jesus was thinking here. Jesus wasn't upset. He wasn't angry. He wasn't mad. He's actually extending a lot of compassion, and this is how we know it. In the text, especially in Hebrew and Jewish culture, when you say a person's name more than once, it's showing intense emotion and connection. It's showing an intense feeling of emotion in that moment. And so that's why Jesus says on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? It's an intense emotion that drives that repetition of a name. Okay, so it's a literary device, and I don't have time to go into all the ways it's used, but just know that he is expressing compassion for her. He's not kind of, Martha, Martha. He's not doing that. He's saying, Martha, Martha, why are you anxious and troubled about so many things? He uses these two words, anxious and troubled, which I think gives us insight into this. So I want to talk about anxiety for a second. I want to share something about anxiety. I want you to be really clear. I'm not talking about clinical anxiety here. Now, there's some of us that have clinical anxiety due to PTSD, due to traumatic events that have happened to us, maybe even due to chemical imbalances, okay? So that's not what I'm talking about. When I say that anxiety is a choice revolving around fear and pride, what I mean is non-clinical, situational anxiety. But the word anxious is, I looked it up in a lexicon, right, like a dictionary for Greek words, and this is what it says, that this word is often used for the cares of life which disturb sleep, from which refuge is sought in love or drink, and which only death can end. Namely, that this type of anxiety that he's talking about, the type of anxiety that disturbs the sleep, that you try to placate, you try to run away from with love or drink or sleep, and only death can end. What it's saying is that anxiety is the things that keep you awake at night. So I want you to think for a second. What keeps you awake at night? Do you have things that keep you awake at night? Do you have things that keep you from going to sleep, that disturb you when you got nothing else on your mind, right? The kids are in bed, you're in bed. That's really who you are, begins to come out. And so what keeps you awake at night? The things that keep you awake at night, that's anxiety. Okay, that's what anxiety is talking about. But then he uses this other word. You are anxious and troubled about many things. So troubled is a different word. It means to disturb or to make a noise or an uproar, to be turbulent or to throw into confusion. So anxiety is what keeps you awake at night. Troubles are what makes you keep others awake at night. Okay, so the anxiety is the internal thing that keeps you awake at night, but troubles is what you put on other people. Now, you can probably, having been in quarantine, been around your spouse, your kids for a long time, you can feel other people's anxiety. And they put that on you, and you put that on others when you feel that anxiousness. That's what the word troubled means. That's disturbing others. So anxiety is what you feel. That's what keeps you awake at night. Trouble is what makes you keep others awake at night. There's a quote from Tim Keller about anxiety. And this is what he says. He says, anxiety is a daily statement to God saying, I don't think you have my best interest in mind. So I want to break down what is the food of anxiety? What feeds anxiety in our life? And I'm going to say it's two things. It's fear and it's pride. So fear. Fear says, I won't be provided for. Now look at what Martha says. Martha was distracted. She said, Lord, do you not care? The first thing she doubts is Jesus' compassion, his caring for her. Lord, do you not care? See, the first thing that drives anxiety is fear. It says, I won't be provided for. And what that does is it leads us to this anxiety, this thing that keeps us awake at night. And what that does is it steals our love. Like Martha was not loving or gracious when she went to Jesus and she went to Mary. She could have just said, hey, Mary, could you help me out? I got a few things I could really use your help with. No, she comes in bold, angry with Jesus, angry with Mary, and that to her, that's stealing her love. And it's a vicious cycle of fear that drives us towards anxiety. So the cycle is this: I'm afraid, thus I'm anxious. I'm unloving towards others, and then I continually become more afraid, and then I'm more anxious and I'm more unloving. And then what happens is that we actually won't be provided for by other people because we're not loving. We're not gracious to them. We push people away by our harshness. Do you think that Mary would really want to get up after hearing that and help Martha? Probably not. She's probably frustrated, right? So do you see how the cycle works? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. We get anxious that we're not going to get provided for. That causes us anxiety. It causes us to lose our love. And then all of a sudden we push other people away, and then we're not provided for. So that's the cycle of fear. But there's also a second kind of way that our anxiety gets fed, and that's through pride. Pride says, I can and must do it myself. Pride says, I can and must do it myself. And what that does is that leads to isolation, and it leads to resentment. I want you to picture Martha in the room. She was probably clanging the dishes a little bit louder, right? She's probably moving stuff around a little bit more so that Mary can hear it, right? So she wants some help. And what that does is she's in that room alone. She's isolated, and then she's getting resentful and angry. And what that does is that steals her joy. So the cycle says this. The cycle of pride says, I can and must do this myself, which then leads you to be withdrawn and resentful. It pushes people away, so even when they come and help you, guess what? They don't want to help you. You're pushing them away. I got to do this myself. It leads to isolation and resentment, which then actually puts more work on your plate. I can and must do this myself, which then leads you to deeper levels of being withdrawn and isolated and resentful, which leads you to push people away stronger when they try to help you, which puts more on your plate. Do you see how it's a cycle? Do you see how pride is the cycle? It steals your joy and it becomes cyclical, right? See, fear and pride are both the root cause and the fruit of anxiety. So fear and pride is what starts it. And then as it grows, that's what continual fruit grows from anxiety is more fear and more pride. See, anxiety is a choice that revolves around fear and pride. Secondly, Jesus destroys anxiety with joy-filled love. You see, how does Jesus meet our anxiety? He destroys fear with love, and he destroys pride with joy. Look, remember, fear says, I won't be provided for. And really the deeper question is that Martha was asking is, does Jesus love me? Jesus, do you love me? That's what she's asking. That's what that fear, the root fear says, I won't be provided for. Really the question is, does God love me? And this is what God responds with. I do love you, and I prove it by sending Jesus. Look with me at Romans 5, verse 8. But God shows his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. But God shows, remember that there's another way that this could be interpreted. God demonstrates his love. Like, look at how much the Father loves us, that when we're sinning, when we're enemies of God, he sent us the ultimate provision. He provides for us ultimately, meeting our need with his deep love. Not only that, but Jesus also speaks to our pride. Remember, pride says, I can and must do it myself. And really, the deeper question is God enough for me? Does God love me, but is God sovereign? Is he enough for me? And this is how God answers that. God says, I will give you everything you need with joy. And he proves it by continuously giving us access to Jesus. Look with me at Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Listen to that. He will graciously give us all things in Christ. If you could get what you need apart from God, why in the world would he go through these great lengths to become a man and to live a perfect life and to have himself separated on the cross, Jesus separated from his Father on the cross? Like, why would he do that if you could get what you need anywhere else? But you see, here's the deal. Jesus doesn't leave you in the midst of pride, in the midst of anxiety, in the midst of fear. He's still present with you. He still loves you. He's still with you. If you are a follower of Jesus, he is present with you. He is here. And if God gave Jesus to solve the ultimate provision on the cross, how much more will he not give you all things that you need through Jesus? That's what he does. Through the work of Christ, he will give you everything that you need. He ultimately provides for you. He says, I will give you everything you need with joy. My friends, Jesus destroys anxiety with joy-filled love. Now, here's the catch-22. Why doesn't it feel like he destroys anxiety if I'm still anxious? I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm still anxious. Why doesn't it feel this way? See, we're presented with this conundrum that the Bible says one thing, but I'm feeling another thing. Why? How do we find this joy-filled love? How do we fight the fear and pride that feeds our anxiety? How do we do this? How in the world do we fight the fear and pride that drives our anxiety? And that's what gets us to our third point today, is that Jesus took the bitter portion so that we can take the better portion. And that's based off of Luke 10:41, the end of that verse. Look with me at what it says. It says, Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken from her. Now, often when we get to this point in the text, most pastors will say that they'll kind of culminate this comparison. They'll say, now don't be a Martha, be a Mary. Just go sit at the foot of Jesus. Just go sit. Don't be a Martha. Don't be so busy. You can rest. You can just sit at Jesus' feet. And my friends, we're not going there today. Let me tell you why, because that's moralism. You can't force yourself to go to Jesus' feet. You can't force yourself to be a Mary. You can't look good, be good, do good, act good in such a way that you will succeed in this. You can't do it. And so those sermons that end with just be a Mary, not a Martha, they leave you absolutely dejected and offer you no hope. See, here's the stark reality, that we are all Marthas. And there is nothing we can do to help that. We are all kept awake at night, aren't we? If you're honest with yourself, I'm honest with myself. I'm going to be honest with us as a church. We all lay awake at night and have anxiety. We have anxiety about our kids, right? We have anxiety about our relationships. We have anxiety about COVID-19. We have anxiety about our jobs, our work, our finances in the midst of all this. We have anxiety about food, sickness. Anxieties keep us awake at night, and troubles to keep others awake at night with us. Now, spouses, this is not the time to do a cross eye over at your spouse, okay? Because I know y'all been in quarantine, okay? And y'all been getting on each other's nerves. I just know it, okay? So this is not the time to side eye, because guess what? If you're feeling your spouse's anxiety, they're feeling your anxiety, probably worse. So just admit that you both are getting on each other's nerves. You both have this anxiety that's getting poured one another. And here's the deal. That's me. I'm anxious about this virus, guys. I'm anxious about our people in our church getting sick. I don't want to get sick. I don't want my mom to get sick. The dishes are piling up. The laundry's piling up. The house isn't as clean as I'd like it to be. Are we really getting what we need? And Jesus says this interesting word here. He says this word portion. Mary has chosen the good portion. And that word portion means part. It's very interesting. It's like an assigned allotment or share. It's a part, like a piece of pie, right? It's just like something that you can take. It's your portion. It's your allotment. And we're being presented with an opportunity. We can take either portion. So we can take anxiety with its fear and its pride, or we can take love that's filled with joy. Now, here's the deal. My mom makes the best yellow cake with chocolate frosting, okay? There is some magic, some witchcraft she does with this thing to make it just the texture is perfect every single time. Every year when it comes to my birthday, she always makes it for me. And she it's just unbelievable, right? And I want you to think of that like this love, this joy-filled love, because that's filled with a lot of love and something. I don't know what else it is, but it's good, right? So I want you to picture that like this option of love, and then I want you to picture this idea of being anxious with fear and with pride, like a 10-day-old Walmart sheet cake. Okay, you ever had the old sheet cake, like old? I'm talking about it's crusty, right? You take the spoon and you got to crust off the freaking icing to get to the stale cake. All right, that's what he's saying. Do you want joy-filled love, or do you want anxiety filled with fear and filled with pride? Now, here's the deal. We all want the chocolate cake, don't we? We all want the love, but we almost always take the anxiety. We almost always take that 10-day-old Walmart grossness. Why? You see, we've got to think through the reason why. The reason why we do that so often is because we desire control, because we want to be in control. And admitting that we're not in control, admitting that we don't have control, sends us into a spiral. You see, the key to this is remembering that Jesus took the bitter portion that we deserved. In the Old Testament, God's wrath against sin and death and brokenness is described like a cup. And it's like the cup of God's wrath. And throughout the entirety of the Bible, we see this idea of a cup of God's wrath. And Isaiah 51 gives us a prophecy about what's going to happen with this cup of God's wrath. Thus says the Lord, who pleads the cause of his people. Listen, God pleads your cause. He loves you. Thus says the Lord, who pleads the cause of his people. Behold, I have taken from your hand the cup of staggering. The bowl of my wrath you shall drink no more. How? How does he do that? Fast forward a couple thousand years. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, right before his passion, right before he is ready to take the sins of the world on him and on his shoulders, he prays these words. He says, Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Jesus took the bitter portion. Jesus took the cup of God's wrath so that we could choose the better portion of God's love. We can drink deeply of God's grace, drink deeply of God's love, because Jesus took the bitter portion, the bitter cup of God's wrath. And see, what happens is that love that we get meets us in our anxiety, and it speaks love to our fear, and it speaks joy to our pride. On the cross, Jesus took this. And the invitation of Jesus is to choose the better portion by coming to him. See, all we have to do to come to Jesus is give up control. And I would say that the root of our anxiety, the root of the fear and the pride that drives our anxiety is that we are in control in those moments. And guess what? It's exhausting, guys. It's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible way to live. There's a couple of Bible verses that kind of get on my nerves sometimes. Let me tell you why. Because they're on coffee mugs, and you got like a little Thomas Kincaid painting, on the little coffee mug, and it's got like a cute little Bible verse on it, in like nice flowery letters. And many of you as parents, my mom has a few of them. So like you get this like idea, and one of these verses is this. It says, "Cast all your cares on him, for he cares for you." Right? And that's so nice to when you're drinking your coffee in the morning. But I think the context of this passage, that's where we're going to land today. The context of it is so much more weight to it. Look at what it says in 1 Peter 5, 6-7. It says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you." My friends, the pathway to choosing the yellow cake with chocolate frosting, the top notch, the pathway to choosing joy-filled love and not fear and pride-induced anxiety is that you have to come to Jesus in humility. You have to see that you can't provide for yourself, that you can't do it all on your own, that you can't solve the problems of this world on your own and on your shoulders. And you have to throw up your hands and you have to say, "I can't do it." That's why Mary sat at the feet of Jesus. She needed it. That's how we can come to Jesus, is when we see our deep need. Humility is the key. And as we humble ourselves, we then see ourselves as in need, humbly coming to God. But then we see God as mighty, who can lift us up, who can take care of all of our needs for us with his strong right arm. And that's when we're able to cast our anxieties on him because he cares for us. That's when we see it, when we humble ourselves, see God as mighty, seeing God for who he is, seeing ourselves for who we are, changes everything. So our main point for today is this, that Jesus meets us in the midst of anxiety and offers us a better choice of joy-filled love. That's what I want to invite you in today. If you're not yet a follower of Jesus, I want you to put a stake in the ground today. Say, "Yes, I choose to follow this God who will take my anxieties and my cares at his cross, who's resolved my fear, who's resolved my pride, who meets my fear with his love, who meets my pride with his joy. Yes, I give my life to him." If you're joining us today and you are a follower of Jesus, I want to assure you that it is normal to feel anxiety. It is normal to want that control. It is normal to want that pride. It is normal to engage with that fear. And the invitation of Jesus is that he has not changed towards you. He is gently calling your name. He loves you. He cares for you. He's not angry with you. He's not mad at you. He completely loves you. And he wants to invite you to lay your burdens at his feet, to humble yourself. Say, "I have been prideful. I have been fearful. That's what causes my anxiety." Come to him today, right now. Pray and say, "God, I have been fearful. I've been prideful. I need your help. I need your grace." And then what he does is he meets your fear with his love. He meets your pride with his joy. And he gives you a better way. I want to invite you guys to join us for our live Q&A at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. So you can join us if you're on our website. You just hit refresh on the page. You can go to Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, pretty much everything you need. If you want a list of all of our options, you can get all the links at our website, redeeminghope.org/live. Text us your questions, text us any of your information. If you want to engage, ask questions, or you just want to connect, you can text us at 931-326-4512. And guys, I just want to encourage you from the bottom of my heart. I love you. I've been praying for you. And we'll look forward to seeing you at our live Q&A at 11 a.m. Thanks for joining us.